Cody, come here!
Yeah, boss?
You need to use a VPN when online. You could have let monsters find us.
Really? Oh, no.
Oh, no.
In the summer of 1983, the third feature film starring the Muppets was beginning production, and Frank Oz was in the director's chair. While he had co-directed The Dark Crystal with Jim Henson just 2 years prior, this would be his first time directing a film alone. Oz desperately wanted to enter the world of entertainment beyond the Muppets, and the chance to direct the film could be huge for his future career. Jim believed in his friend's talent and was happy to let him shoot the film. It didn't hurt that Jim was also juggling many other projects and was more than pleased with serving as a mere performer for the production. The film, entitled The Muppets Take Manhattan, had been rewritten by Oz, removing much of the trademark Muppet mayhem in favor of more subtle character moments. In the same vein, Oz would require retake after retake of each scene, demanding near perfection from the Muppet performers and human actors. Oz was making mistakes and frustrating his friends. Even Jim grew tired of Oz's directorial style, although he would retain his typical silence even when stewing. Despite the difficulty, Jim was right to have given the film to Oz. It was a learning experience for him, and The Dark Crystal and The Muppets Take Manhattan would be just the beginning of his prosperous directing career. While the third Muppet feature seemed to lack the expected Muppet energy, it featured an unexpected hit. A hit that would become one of Henson's most profitable commodities. The showstopper in The Muppets Take Manhattan was surprisingly Muppet Babies.
Hello there, my name is Jim Henson and I'm a puppeteer. I'm called a puppeteer because I work with puppets.
Okay, you're gonna love this story. Greatest story in the world.
Hey, thank you, and welcome again to another Muppet Show.
The Muppets Take Manhattan premiered on July 13, 1984. While the Muppet movie was a trip to Hollywood and the Great Muppet Caper was set in London, The Muppets Take Manhattan would see the Muppets taking over the Big Apple, attempting to create their own Broadway show. The film was received fairly well by critics, although many noted that the more dramatic take on the Muppets did not suit them as well as Running Gags or Dynamite did. Despite the mixed reception, the film was a financial success, grossing over $25 million on an $8 million budget. The box office gross might have been in part due to the cultural fixation on the relationship of the film's stars. The two most popular Muppet characters had developed a faux will they won't they storyline, with various tabloids and media outlets parodying themselves by speculating on the nature of the fictional characters' relationship. By 1984, the joke had developed into a genuine curiosity from fans, and when news broke that the third Muppet feature culminated in a wedding between Kermit and Miss Piggy, both the press and fans alike were beside themselves with anticipation.
A marriage does occur. Let's just say that.
Well, is that you and Kermit getting married?
You bet.
There's no marriage. We don't talk about these things.
While the world debated whether the scene in the film meant that the two Muppets were actually married, Jim's own marriage with his wife, Jane Henson, was falling apart. In the years that Jim had been away shooting The Muppet Show and The Dark Crystal in London, he had begun dating other women. Jane had been aware of Jim's infidelity, and the two rarely spoke of the situation. Jim's shame, along with his non-confrontational nature, had made discussing it at length difficult. In 1983, the couple legally separated, but did not divorce. Despite the two's separation and Jim's failures as a husband, they would continue to be dedicated parents for their children and even collaborators in business. Jane Henson was brilliant, with a keen eye for performance, and Jim respected her and her opinion more than almost anyone else. Even during the most difficult times in their relationship and separation, Jim would rely on Jane for advice, and Jane would give it to him. The wedding scene from The Muppets Take Manhattan would also be impressive in that 175 puppeteers were brought in to perform the over 300 Muppets in attendance for the ceremony, including many Muppets from Sesame Street and Uncle Traveling Matt from Fraggle Rock. Still, with all the excitement surrounding the film's final scene, audiences left theaters buzzing about a short dream sequence in which the Muppet cast was reimagined as babies. Sensing the potential in the characters, Henson Associates began making deals with manufacturers of toddler products. Jim had initially been very strict about the use of his characters in merchandising, approving products individually to ensure the integrity of his work was upheld. While he still remained involved in the process, he had become much more lenient with the amount of merchandising that he approved. The Muppets had proven to be a cash cow, and Jim's expensive creative ventures needed funding. Plus, when Robert Holmes à Court took over Lord Lou Grade's production company, he acquired the rights to Jim's fantasy film, The Dark Crystal, as well as The Muppet Show, the first 2 Muppet movies, and several Muppet specials. Jim bought back the rights to his work, buying The Dark Crystal for $15 million a few years prior and the Muppet products for $6.5 million in the summer of 1984. These purchases, while risky, were smart and necessary, and they would not have been possible without the money from merchandising. Jim's production company was transitioning into independently producing bigger films, starting with The Muppets Take Manhattan and eventually moving on to Jim's next big fantasy film. This resulted in Jim being more open to putting his characters, and therefore the Muppet Babies, on various products. This began in early 1984, months before the film's release, with products such as pajamas, furniture, and even diapers featuring the baby characters. Still, one licensing proposition would catch Jim off guard. Marvel Productions was the studio subsidiary of Marvel Comics. The production company had created a few TV shows based off of the superheroes popularized by the comics division, and the studio had recently found success with an animated miniseries based off of the Hasbro toy line G.I. Joe. Marvel Productions was interested in using the Muppet Babies characters in a new cartoon series to air on Saturday mornings. The popular programming block catered to the younger demographic, as it was the only day of the week in which most school children would be tuned in. Children would be at school Monday through Friday, and many would be at church on Sunday. This resulted in major networks creating a variety of animated series to air during the block, and the resulting content was unpredictable and certifiably wacky. Throughout the 70s and early 80s, cartoon adaptations of movies, TV shows, comics, and toys dominated the market, and by 1984, a Muppet Babies adaptation would fit right in among the type of shows to which viewers had grown accustomed. Unfortunately, Saturday morning came with a stigma, and Jim was hesitant to allow the Muppets to star in their own cartoon. The programs during this block could be charming, but aside from a few outliers, they had little educational value. It was nowhere near the quality of the children's programming that Jim had created on Sesame Street and Fraggle Rock. However, just by thinking about the difficulties in producing such a program, Jim had talked himself into it. It was his unwavering confidence in himself, now justified by nearly 30 years in the entertainment industry, that led him to believe that it didn't matter what other Saturday morning programs were doing, Jim and his team could figure out a way to do it right. He set up a concept meeting between Marvel Productions, CBS, and a few of his associates to discuss the potential of the series. When the meeting was over, they had figured out the show, or at least its core theme. A belief close to Jim's heart, the power of creativity and the importance of diverse creative minds would frame the Muppet Babies project. Only a creator like Jim would require a silly animated cartoon featuring baby versions of popular characters to have such a profound and deep core, but the added element is what would elevate the project to a Jim Henson production. CBS agreed to pick up the show, and Jim trusted Marvel Productions to produce it. He would retain quality control, assigning his trusted collaborators Michael Frith and Larry Merkin, 2 people integral in the creation of Fraggle Rock, to the role of creative consultants. Marvel Productions commissioned Japanese animation company, Toei Animation, to animate the show. Marvel and Toei already had a strong relationship, having created the Spider-Man, G.I. Joe, and Transformers animated series together. The first season of Muppet Babies was to consist of 13 episodes, and Marvel Productions and those assigned to the project from Henson Associates went to work. It was decided, likely due to scheduling conflicts and budgeting, that the Muppet performers would not voice their respective characters in the cartoon. Instead, voice actors would be cast in the familiar roles. Frank Welker, most known for voicing Scooby-Doo, would perform Baby Kermit and Baby Beaker. Laurie O'Brien, who had previously voiced characters for a variety of Marvel productions, would play Baby Piggy. Greg Berg, an actor who would go on to voice a variety of characters in other popular animated series, would voice Baby Fozzie and Baby Scooter. Katie Lee, an actress who would go on to voice memorable characters in shows on ABC's Disney Afternoon block, would voice Baby Rolf. Russi Taylor, who would soon take over the voice of Minnie Mouse, would voice Baby Gonzo and Robin. A new female character would be created for the show, the athletic Skeeter, Scooter's sister. She, along with Baby Bunsen and Baby Animal, would be voiced by Howie Mandel. Another new character would be introduced, Nanny, voiced by Barbara Billingsley from Leave It to Beaver. Nanny was the caretaker of the Muppet Babies, and her face was never seen, similar to the handling of the adult characters in Peanuts, of which Jim was a fan. The format of Muppet Babies was nothing out of the ordinary. The episodes would begin with the show's theme song. The show would then typically find the Muppet Babies in the nursery, introducing the show's conflict. In the first episode, titled Noisy Neighbors, the babies needed to keep Animal quiet so they wouldn't disturb the next-door neighbor. Piggy attempted to calm Animal by telling him a story, while Gonzo tried to entertain him with a made-up TV show. The simple stories created for the episodes would allow for elaborate dream and imagination sequences. One baby would act as the director of the sequence, with the other babies acting as performers. The characters took turns imagining these stories, with each character having a type of story that they gravitated toward. As explained in the show's theme, Kermit liked adventure, Piggy liked romance, Fozzie liked comedy, Rolf liked music, Animal and Gonzo liked action, Scooter liked computers, Skeeter liked sports, and Bunsen and Beaker liked inventing. Their stories wouldn't always follow these exact traits, and their unique personalities would also play a role in the way in which they told stories. It was just the way that Jim had envisioned. Each episode would also feature an original song. In Noisy Neighbors, a song named Sleep Rockin' was performed. A major element of the show would be the use of live-action footage from popular films and television shows. For instance, in the show's 4th episode, Raiders of the Lost Muppet, Kermit played the role of Indiana Jones, with scenes from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom being incorporated into the animation. The film had released in May of that year, so the ability to use the footage was impressive. While Jim had always had an ask for forgiveness, not permission mindset when it came to copyright, the use of footage from Lucasfilm and the Muppet Babies would not cause issues, likely due to Henson's close relationship with George Lucas. A relationship that was about to grow much stronger. Even before the release of The Dark Crystal, Jim and illustrator Brian Froud were already discussing the potential of a second collaboration film. Froud believed a group of baby-stealing goblins would make for an interesting story, and he suggested the main setting be a maze of some kind. Jim liked the idea, and he had reached out to poet Dennis Lee, one half of the Canadian songwriting duo of Fraggle Rock, to write a story. As he had done to David Odell with The Dark Crystal, Jim gave Lee a set of notes, filled with specific characters, settings, plot points, and moments that Jim wanted to see in the script. Lee then took these and attempted to make a draft out of them. In late 1983, Lee turned in the draft for a film tentatively titled Labyrinth. In the time that Lee had been writing, Jim had been scouring through The Dark Crystal and its less than stellar critical reviews, attempting to find a reason that the film had not been a smash hit with audiences. While Froud, critics, and many others agreed that it was simply the film's weak story, Jim had narrowed the issues to 2 different points: the lack of humor and the lack of humans. To solve the former, Jim had recruited Monty Python member Terry Jones to rewrite Lee's script, believing that the comedian's pen would result in a more entertaining and watchable product. As for live actors, incorporating a few humans would not be an issue, as the film's protagonist was to be a young girl that wishes goblins would come steal her baby brother. Jim would not stop there, choosing to make one of the film's biggest and most entertaining characters, Jareth, the Goblin King, a live actor as well. Jim wanted a musician to play Jareth, and envisioned the character as a dark, villainous rock star. Jim had been pursuing Sting to play the character, but it was Jim's children, especially his son John, that begged him to consider another possibility: David Bowie. Jim was skeptical, but decided to meet with Bowie about the project. Jim quickly realized his children were right, and asked Bowie to play the role. He would agree to play Jareth, and he would also write original music for the film. This would be just the beginning of the powerhouse team of talent that Jim was assembling for Labyrinth. He would also reach out to friend and collaborator George Lucas, asking him to join the project as an executive producer. The world-renowned creator of Star Wars and Indiana Jones had worked with Henson a few times in the past. Lucas, one of the biggest names in Hollywood, had not directed a film since 1977's Star Wars. He had instead been overseeing major productions as a producer, helping with writing, directing, and editing from the role of a consultant. This seemed to be exactly what Jim needed to elevate Labyrinth above The Dark Crystal with audiences, as Lucas's creative mind had the unique ability to bring fantastical science fiction into the mainstream. Throughout 1984, Jim was deep in pre-production for Labyrinth, and auditioning child actors for the role of the film's protagonist, Sarah. In early 1985, Jennifer Connelly was chosen for the role, and shooting was to begin in April. Jim brought in Fraggle Rock writer Laura Phillips and screenwriter Elaine May to help with the script, resulting in Henson, Froud, Lee, Jones, Lucas, Phillips, and May all having a hand in the story. While Jim would work on the Labyrinth for most of 1985, projects that he had worked on or set in motion were scheduled to release throughout the year. Follow That Bird, the first Sesame Street feature film, was to premiere in August, and Jim Henson Presents the World of Puppetry, a series of specials showcasing puppeteers from around the globe, would also debut. At the same time, episodes of Fraggle Rock, Sesame Street, and Muppet Babies were still being produced. The first 13-episode season of Muppet Babies had aired on CBS from September 15th to December 8th, 1984. The show was a huge success, both financially and critically. Critics praised the program as a welcome break from the violence and immaturity of Saturday morning programming, and the Babies were turning out to be a merchandising juggernaut. The show was renewed for a second season of 13 episodes to begin airing on September 15, 1985. Due to the show's success, a spin-off companion series was created titled Little Muppet Monsters. The new show was to air with Muppet Babies, creating an hour block of programming billed as Jim Henson's Muppet Babies and Muppet Monsters.
They're down in the basement, everybody knows. Little Muppet Monsters. They built a crazy gizmo and they're putting on show. Little Muppet Monsters. Little Muppet Monsters.
Little Muppet Monsters starred new characters Tug, Boo, and Molly, who had to record an impromptu TV show in the basement of the Muppet apartment complex. The three had help from various other Muppet characters, including Kermit, Fozzie, and Gonzo. The show was half live-action Muppet performances and half animated sequences, with the cartoon segments featuring the grown-up versions of the Muppet characters as opposed to their baby versions. Kermit would introduce a recurring segment, Kermit the Frog, Private Eye, and Fozzie would host a segment called Fozzie's Comedy Corner. Despite 18 episodes of the show being filmed, only 3 were animated, finished, and aired. There were multiple issues with the show. For one, Toei Animation could not keep up with the show's schedule, causing production delays as the live-action segments were completed, with no animated segments to finish the episodes. Also, while Henson, Oz, Dave Goelz, Richard Hunt, and Jerry Nelson performed their regular Muppet characters for the live-action segments, the animated sequences used voice actors. This resulted in an awkward transition, as in one scene, Jim would be performing Kermit, and immediately afterward, Welker would be providing the voice.
Fozzie Bear and I were hot on the trail of something.
Kermit, what are we hot on the trail of? I haven't decided yet, Fuzzy. Oh, okay.
The biggest reason for the show's remaining 15 episodes never being finished was Jim himself, who enacted his quality control authority and pulled the show. This is reportedly due to the less-than-ideal results of mixing live-action puppetry and animated sequences. Muppet Babies story director Scott Shaw explained that the live-action Muppet segments brought out the imperfection in Toei's quickly produced animations, making them appear cheap in comparison to the Muppets. CBS and Marvel pulled the show, choosing to air 2 episodes of Muppet Babies to fill the block instead. This proved to be even more popular than the hour block with the 2 shows, a testament to just how beloved Muppet Babies already was. The second season of Muppet Babies would air from September 14th to December 7th, 1985. On January 21st, 1986, The Muppets, a celebration of 30 years, premiered on CBS. The special was a banquet for the Muppets, hosted by Fozzie, celebrating their past 30 years of entertainment, with all the popular Muppets making appearances, and some cameos by forgotten Muppets as well.
Hey, I just have one question, man. How come you look so much better now than you did then? Well, that's one of the advantages of being a Muppet. By the way, where is Yorick? Oh, Yorick, yes. Anyway, let's remember all the help that I've had through the years. Yorick, will you stop that?
The month after the special premiered, Jim's team was at work filming another special, The Tale of the Bunny Picnic, a cute story that Jim and his daughter Cheryl had developed together. The special starred a new Muppet named Bean Bunny, performed by Steve Whitmire, and it would premiere in late March. Apart from the occasional Muppet specials or appearances, Jim was fully focused on Labyrinth. The team had finished production on the film in September of 1985, and post-production would run into early 1986, with Jim reviewing rough cuts with Lucas. Jim then promoted the film leading up to its June 27th release, hoping that his second non-Muppet directorial effort would be the rousing success he had wanted The Dark Crystal to be. He did not anticipate the exact opposite. Critics were not impressed by the film. Some accused Henson of killing all of the tension and conflict in order to appeal to a family audience, while others, clearly fans of Henson and his work, tried to be gentle in their critiques. But the consensus seemed to be unanimous. The Labyrinth was not the hit that Henson had hoped to make, and many considered it worse than The Dark Crystal. While critics complained about the film they had seen, it seemed that the public was not seeing it at all. The film grossed under $13 million, nowhere near its $25 million budget, all money that Jim's production company had put up themselves. The film's failure was a low point for Jim. When Dark Crystal received a mixed response from critics, it was at least still financially successful. With Labyrinth, Jim had made a film that was both a critical and financial failure, and although it would eventually grow a cult following, at the time, it appeared that Jim was not cut out for Hollywood features. He had fallen in love with the process for multiple reasons. For one, Jim's fascination with world building was satisfied with the lengthy pre-production phase of the feature film cycle. Getting to truly develop a world down to its details, and then construct it for the screen, was a dream for his creative mind. Also, being a feature film director was a status symbol in the industry, and Jim seemed to want to be regarded in the same way that a creator like George Lucas was. Those were the upsides, but now, after the film's failure, he was experiencing the downsides. World building is fun, but when an audience rejects the world that a creator imagines, the work seems to have been in vain. With feature films, that is a gamble, and with Labyrinth, it was an expensive, time-consuming gamble that didn't pay off. While Jim attempted to overcome his disappointment, Muppet Babies was entering its 3rd season on CBS. A few changes were made to the show's opening, and Dave Coulier would join the voice cast, replacing Howie Mandel for Baby Animal and Baby Bunsen, while Frank Welker would take over the role of Baby Skeeter. The third season of Muppet Babies would consist of 16 episodes, and would air from September 13th to December 27th, 1986. On December 6th of that year, a Muppet Christmas special, The Christmas Toy, would premiere on ABC. The film, introduced by Kermit, would be produced by the Fraggle Rock team in Toronto. The special centered around a group of toys that come to life when humans leave the room, and one toy having trouble coming to grips with the fact that he will no longer be his child's favorite. This might sound familiar. Labyrinth was an unprecedented disappointment for Jim Henson, and although it made him wary of pursuing more feature films, it did nothing to stop the persistence of his creative mind. In a matter of months, he was on to his next idea. Although he had realized it too late, the weakness of the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth was their respective stories. But if there was one thing that most critics had loved, it was Jim's production design and the Creature Shop's handiwork. He was planning to take this talent back to the arena he knew best: television. And this time, he was going to focus on story. His daughter Lisa had suggested that he and his team should attempt to tackle traditional folktales using the gritty realism of the Creature Shop's designs. She emphasized the role of the storyteller in bringing these old tales to life. Suddenly, Jim could see his next venture, calling producer Duncan Kenworthy and preparing the Creature Shop in London for a new television show that he would call The Storyteller. The English actor John Hurt was chosen to be the show's host, acting as a wise storyteller telling tales in front of a fire, accompanied by his dog, a puppet performed by Brian Henson. Steve Barron would direct the show's pilot, Hans My Hedgehog. The production of the pilot cost nearly $1 million, an enormous amount for a 24-minute episode of television. NBC agreed to air the pilot in January of 1987. And the same critics that had been chastising Labyrinth less than a year prior were now heaping praise upon the storyteller. NBC would pick up the series on the critical success alone, and Jim used the delegation skills he had acquired through Fraggle Rock to find the talent to make the show successful without his involvement. Due to the success of Muppet Babies and annoying programming politics developing at HBO, Fraggle Rock ended in early 1987, but a Saturday morning cartoon adaptation of the show would air on NBC later in the year. Similar to Nanny and Muppet Babies, Doc was only seen from the neck down in this series. Fraggle Rock, the animated series, only lasted for one season of 13 episodes, not reaching near the popularity of Muppet Babies. Muppet Babies was renewed for an 18-episode fourth season. 5 episodes of the season would be animated by Toei Animation, while the rest would be animated by Korean animation company ACOM. ACOM would take Toei's place in later seasons as well. Season 4 of Muppet Babies would air from September 19th, 1987 to January 16th, 1988. On November 30th, 1987, Jim Henson was inducted into the Television Academy Hall of Fame. The ceremony began with a tribute to Jim, with Kermit, voiced by Jim but puppeteered by another performer, singing a song about Henson, checking in on the Muppet productions from around the world, including the studio in London, the workshop in New York, Fraggle Rock in Toronto, and Sesame Street. The tribute featured appearances from many Muppet performers, designer Michael Frith, producer David Laser, and Jim's agent Bernie Brillstein. Less than a month later, on December 16, 1987, Jim's creations would unite again with the premiere of A Muppet Family Christmas on ABC. Written by Jerry Jewell, the charming and hilarious Christmas special would see Muppets from all of the major productions interacting, with the cast of The Muppet Show, Sesame Street, and Fraggle Rock appearing. There was even a segment with the Muppet Babies. The special ended with all of the Muppets singing a medley of Christmas songs together, including It's in Every One of Us, originally performed in John Denver and the Muppets, A Christmas Together. In the last moments of the special, Jim made a cameo appearance with Sprocket.
Yeah, I like it when they have a good time. But I tell you what, somebody's got to do something about these dishes, Sprocket.
Muppet Babies was renewed for a 13-episode 5th season, which aired from September 10th to December 3rd, 1988. An 11-episode 6th season would air from September 16th to November 25th, 1989. This season saw the addition of Baby Bean Bunny, voiced by Dave Coulier. The 6th season of Muppet Babies was immediately followed by a 15-episode 7th season, airing from December 2nd, 1989 to November 3rd, 1990. Statler and Waldorf were introduced to the animated series during this season, referred to as Uncle Statler and Uncle Waldorf, both voiced by Dave Coulier. After nearly a year-long hiatus, an 8-episode 8th season of Muppet Babies aired from September 14th to November 2nd, 1991. This put the show over the coveted 100-episode number, making the series desirable to syndicators. This, coupled with the general decline in Saturday morning programming, resulted in the 8th season of Muppet Babies being the show's last. The show's final episode to air was titled 8 Flags Over the Nursery. The episode saw the babies working together to build their own theme park. The last line before the show's credits came from Nanny, remarking, "What will they think of next?" While new episodes of Muppet Babies would not be produced, the show immediately entered syndication, extending its life into the 2000s, and it would eventually be given a new life entirely. The final episode of the original Muppet Babies series was also noteworthy in that it reused a scene from the Kermit the Frog Private Eye segment from an episode of Little Muppet Monsters. This resulted in a single line from Kermit performed by Jim Henson. This was notable, as just over a year before the episode's release, Jim Henson had died.
Is this for moving in space? For locating in space? Yes. Okay. So each of these...
In the summer of 1988, 2 years before his passing, Jim began production on a pilot episode of a new show that he was calling the Jim Henson Hour. The program was to be created in the same spirit of Walt Disney's Disneyland, later renamed to Walt Disney Presents and then to Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. These anthology series featured Walt Disney showcasing his team's talent and technology, giving a behind-the-scenes look at his productions, as well as introducing various television programs and specials. For Jim, this was a way to experiment with new technology, test show concepts, and increase the viewership of the Storyteller, which was failing in the ratings despite its critical success. Perhaps the most attractive aspect of the Walt Disney format was the opportunity for Jim to bring himself closer to the idea of Walt Disney. Jim, an outspoken fan of Disney's work, was impressed with the company's ability to immortalize its characters. Something had switched in Jim's brain. The creator that always felt that his time was running out was less focused on doing everything he wanted to before he left. He was now fascinated with the idea of keeping his creations around after he was gone. The way the Walt Disney Company was able to keep characters such as Mickey Mouse in the mainstream decades after the deaths of their creators was unparalleled. When it came to eternalizing creative work, Jim was not going to beat Disney, so he was going to do the next best thing for his legacy and the lives of his characters. If Jim couldn't beat Disney, he was going to join them.
Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. Yes, Cody should have used NordVPN and protected him and his data from monsters. With NordVPN's no data logging and double data encryption practices, your data will be secure when browsing online. And now, for a limited time, you can get 75% off a 3-year plan at nordvpn.com/defunctland. This special offer makes your subscription just $2.99 per month, so you can browse securely on all your devices. And for a short time, use code DEFUNCTLAND to get an extra month of Nord for free. That's nordvpn.com/defunctland and use the code DEFUNCTLAND.